This episode of Beyond the Battlefield is presented to you by the Curtis Brown Foundation. On this special episode, Curtis is in Richmond, Texas, interviewing Sandy McGee, owner of Sandy McGee's restaurant located on Morton Street. Curtis and Sandy reflect on her journey as a restaurant owner, how she started her restaurant, her trials and triumphs along the way, and most importantly, the continued examples of the Lord's timing throughout her life. Both Curtis and Sandy have recognized specific circumstances where, in the moment, everything seemed very confusing and difficult to comprehend. However, shortly afterwards, God revealed to them that it was all part of His plan and His timing. We are all living through an unexpected and challenging time, but we need to remind ourselves that the Lord is always in control. His timing is perfect timing, and we need to put our trust in Him that He will return life to normalcy at the right moment. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Never to return to the people we were before that great day. We'll patiently wait. Never to return to the people we were before that great day.
I'm so honored to be here today with Miss Sandy McGee. How are you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing fine.
We are here in your restaurant, and what do we call this room here?
So this room is called the library. It's one of three big rooms in the restaurant. This is used to actually have bookshelves more than you see now, but you know, everything evolves and changes, and so honestly, I'm more focused on food than decor right now.
Right.
All my life, it's always been about the food. So.
Well, that's a crucial thing. That's what draws people in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even at churches, the food draws us in at
Oh,
church.
Absolutely.
A good
Yeah.
potluck dinner, you can get people that haven't been there in a long time.
That's true.
So, when you started your business, what birthed this desire to start your restaurant here?
Okay, well, this was my second location, is my second location. So in 1979, I was working for the Department of Human Resources as a social worker, and I thought, well, I had been married to Max McGee for 7 years, and I was pregnant and thought, well, I'll just take my 6 weeks maternity leave, and I'll go right back to work. I had that baby, Ashley, and I thought, I can't leave her with someone else to raise her. What are we going to do? And so I went to Max, my husband, and I said, I just don't think I can leave her at daycare. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And so I started cooking out of my home. That daughter is now almost 41.
Wow.
And so that's how that was the reason. So I started cooking out of my home, and then, not to bore you with all the details, but one thing led to another. And found this little house in Rosenberg, and I started just catering out of that house. And then I couldn't stand it because there were 3 or 4 rooms, and so I started seating people in there. And that was 1970 something that I started catering, and then by 1986 I was doing dine-in there, and 1996 opened in Richmond.
Wow.
So that's how this came about.
So, it all started with you were dealing with people constantly on a regular basis as a social worker, building relationships,
Yes.
getting to know people, and knowing what their struggles were, didn't you?
Absolutely, yes.
So that it ties into what you do now. You're very sociable. You have just a great presence. You're very friendly. You love people.
I love people. I love feeding people. So that's kind of something that even before I ever got into the restaurant business, at the Department of Human Resources, I was constantly bringing food up there. And yes, learning to deal with my clients then, I'm learning and have been learning for now 36 years how to deal with my employees and customers.
And understanding that they matter, don't they?
Oh my gosh. This place would not run without those mostly women in the kitchen. There are a few men, but mostly women.
And it's just amazing how I would have never known this. It all started with a child. A child changes everything, doesn't it?
A child changes everything. I didn't think it would, but it did.
I think of, when Micah was born, that's what God used to inspire me to continue on. And
Right.
so as you grew here, you went from Rosenberg, you came to Richmond, which isn't a long ways for.
No, what happened was we were busting at the seams in this little 1,700 square foot house, and Mr. Onstead of the Swinging Door, not the current Steve Onstead, but his dad, said, "Sandy, why don't you rent this place from me?" And I said, "No, I don't think I want 2 locations." And he goes, "Well, why don't you sell that one?" And I said, "No, someone told me never close a business that's making money."
That's good advice.
Yes. So he said, "I'll make you an offer that you can't refuse." And so the rent was pretty low. And so it was just half of this building in the beginning. And oh my gosh, it opened up Sandy McGee's, because then I'm so close to the courthouse. We're located on Morton Street, as you
Right.
know. And the courthouse then was just a block over. And so between the attorneys and the courthouse people, the line was out the door over here. So
They say
I'm
location,
blessed.
location, location,
for
right?
sure, yes.
So when you first moved here, kind of give us a little history on this building that we're in now.
Okay, so I rented at first, and the building was built in the late 1800s, 1896 or something like that. So I only rented part of it, and so I had attorneys that leased upstairs, that Mr. Onstead was the landlord. And then down the road, he said, "Why don't you and Max buy this from me?" And Max was a mortgage banker, and he said, "Sandy, there's no way we can qualify for a second mortgage." He knew that. And so Mr. Onstead said, "Well, I'll owner finance it." And so what a blessing that man was in my life, because he owner financed it. And then fast forward to the year 2000, my husband died suddenly. And so I had the building, we extended the length of the loan and reduced the monthly payment so that I could afford it.
Right.
And so people just come into your life, Curtis, that bless you more than you'll ever know, because now it's paid for.
That's, praise God for that. We look at the importance of relationships again. Mm-hmm. Just your dedication here and the consistency of, here every day, over and over and over, that people get to know you from the community, your landlord or the guy holding your loan gets to know you.
Right.
And that relationship's crucial, because when they know who you are, they know how you respond in difficult times, even in a traumatic time as losing your husband.
Right.
That those relationships, you feed on each other, don't you? You need each other.
Definitely. This is what we're going through right now. Is it okay if we talk
That's
about
okay.
COVID-19? It's definitely not my first crisis in my life. As I mentioned, the death of my husband in 2000. You don't even know where your strength comes from. You just somehow, you pray and you ask God to guide you, and that's what I did. But then it also takes just digging your heels in and saying, "I'm going to make this work." So one other crisis was, and I won't talk about that very much, but I did open a third restaurant. So I had a location in Sugar Land for a short while. It ended up not being a good deal for me, And so that was another crisis in my life. And so I put all my money basically into that location. So I had to move back and get Richmond and Rosenberg built back up again. So that was like 2001 or 2. And then of course 2007 came another crisis in the oil industry in the Houston area. And my catering customers were not having me cater as much. So this, pandemic that we're going through, it will be over.
It will. And the neat thing that I see is, as I look back on those crises that you went through, that I've went through in my life, I always think about, God always reminds me of the story of Esther. And for all of you guys out there listening that may not know this, and when you read the whole book of Esther, not once is God mentioned. You never see God mentioned in the book of Esther. And that's kind of like our lives. Sometimes we don't see God until afterwards when we look back. But when you look and you read through Esther, you see God all over that. Yeah. He was all over from Mordecai with Esther and protecting the Jews. And the things that we walk through and how God walks us through them aren't always the way that we would have ever thought He would work it out. And I know you see that in your life.
I see it right now in particular because in January, my son, Peyton McGee, was transitioning prior to that from the oil industry to a restaurant in Austin. And then he said, Mom, I really want to come back and help you with this business and grow the business. So he comes back in February of 2020, this year, and what happens in March, and my first thought was, oh God, why did I bring him back now? There's not going to be enough money. But what I'm finding, Curtis, is that God had that plan, because there's no way I could have gotten through. Sorry, it's emotional.
Okay. That's okay.
I could not have gotten through all of this without him, because he's young and he knows social media and online ordering and the website and Instagram and all of that.
Right.
So he has just been, it's been a lifesaver.
And you were longing to see for your son to be here the whole time, and how God worked it out.
Yeah, and this is how it worked out. So
Perfect timing. God's perfect
thing.
timing. It is emotional, and to see how, because when all the struggles before, I think of even in the military, we went through boot camp, and boot camp was the hardest thing I'd ever went through in life. And then advanced training, and then war. But they all, as I look back now, I see how God was preparing me for today.
Oh, he was.
Whether the injuries or the even the addiction, because of preparing me of how to help people, and just like He prepared you, the importance of relationships in the community, the importance of family.
Oh.
God knew you needed your son.
Oh, yes.
But He knew exactly when you needed Him the most, didn't He?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's how God works. And it's funny that you mentioned boot camp, because when Peyton first came back to work here, of course, I know from 36 years in the business, if you don't know the recipes, if you can't fix everything in that kitchen, you won't make it. And that's what I know. I know every recipe.
We are in the restaurant, guys, just so you know.
You can hear the ice crackling. Anyway, when he first came back, and I told him, okay, Peyton, I need you to put yourself on the grill today and do prep. And he did say to me, Mom, I didn't want this to be boot camp. But this is the funny part of it. After they closed the restaurants for dine-in, and everybody's in the restaurant business is just trying their best to regroup. What do we do? Well, it became boot camp for Peyton, because employees didn't show. We didn't have the sales, so we had to let some go. And so that put him into the kitchen boot camp.
Well, that's the maximum amount of training in the least amount of time to prepare for the battle.
Is that a definition of boot camp?
Well, that's my definition, but
I think it's a perfect definition.
And that's what had to take place, because we couldn't change. Just like when war comes, we can't plan out a war. We can't say, okay, we're going to have a war next year at this date. We can't do that. And that's just like what happened with this COVID-19 thing. We couldn't just say, okay, Well, we're going to plan now for this COVID-19 that's going to arrive on March 12th, and they're going to lock us down and say you're only going to do delivery.
Right.
We couldn't prepare for that, could we?
No. Not, and I'm blessed with the business that I do have. Blessed, of course, because Mr. Onstead owner financed and sold me this building, so I don't have rent.
He gave you a chance.
Yes, gave me a chance, that person. And we're blessed because what package is better to go other than pizza than sandwiches and salads? And so, and it's affordable. So
That's right.
So we're very fortunate that we have a pretty good to-go business.
You do, and I think of how I got to know your restaurant was my wife's grandparents came here for years. Of course, her granddad passed away about 5 years ago, but grandmother Miller still comes in here when this isn't going on, and my mother-in-law brings her in and to eat here, and we used to come here every time we'd come down from East Texas. We'd come to Sandy McGee's. And the neat thing is the lights out of Pecan Grove during Christmas time. We'd always come here and eat and go look at the lights. And I think of too of how before you and I met, of how you had just talked to my wife for an hour on the phone.
I know it.
And that is just a God-ordained thing.
It is how people come into your life and the impact that they have. And you've had such an impact on so many people's lives, and even just the fact that I keep your book at my table in the restaurant. I have table 21, which is where I put my purse and my apron, and I have Curtis's book there. And employees will come by, and while they're taking their break, they read your book, and it's special. It really is.
Well, we all have a story. And that's what God put in my heart with this show, Beyond the Battlefield. We don't know what lies next. We're moving beyond this battlefield, and just like you lost your husband, even a business, the struggles you went through with that business, we're beyond that battlefield, which prepared us for the next, and how God uses that. And He has us reflect back as we look back now and say, you were in it, God. Yeah. Just like Esther, you were all over it, in preparing me for today.
Absolutely. I couldn't do it without in prayer.
Amen. And that's what our country needs a lot more, is prayer. And so if I were to ask you some advice, what would you tell somebody starting a business out there today, or after this is over, or even that are going through the same things right now? I'd like you just to give them some advice of what you've learned through the years to encourage them to keep moving forward from this time.
I think, Curtis, one of the most important things is to know your business inside and out, because it's not if they're going to quit, it's just a matter of when. You have to get key people to help you, but you never want to be held hostage by your employees, so you need to know every position in your business. All I know is restaurants, so I think it would translate into any kind of business. Know what your people are doing and how they do it. Does it mean you have to do it every day? No.
Right.
And just, don't be afraid to ask people for help in that particular industry. I rely on Jimmy Cantu at Pier 36. We help each other, as far as he probably helps me more than I help him. But when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, give your thanks to God and thank Him for just all the blessings. See, I'm getting emotional again. All the blessings.
Life is emotional, Sandy.
It is.
And that's okay. It's a release, actually.
It is, yeah. I probably need to do that more, just release. But because as a female business owner, boy, the stress and the pressure. And so if I didn't go to God in prayer, I don't think I could make it.
You're so right. That goes for us as individuals, as a country, for our leaders too. You just made a key statement when you were talking about knowing and everything. I want to share with you real quickly. When I was in the military, I went in and I worked on heavy equipment, from tanks. I worked on basically any kind of tracked vehicle. I also worked on any kind of heavy wheeled vehicle, big old trucks. But I can't tell you how many times I heard, even when we went to war, when I'd ask another soldier to work on another vehicle, he'd say, "That's not my echelon." And the key thing you said there, don't be held hostage by your employees.
Yes.
Know every position.
Yes.
And did it frustrate me that I had to go work on all these vehicles? And I could have said, well, that's not my job.
Right.
But my job was getting us through the war and preserving life. And I had to make it work. I couldn't just say that's not my echelon. And that's where you're at too. You say, I think that's a key point. Don't be held hostage by your employees, knowing how to do everything.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things, so that if something's wrong in your business, you can go correct it. And that's why I tell Peyton, you know, I hate for this to be boot camp, but get in that kitchen so that you can, you know, fix it, because it's all about consistency, and probably in any business.
Yes.
Customer service, constantly, you know, I can't be here all the time, and if I'm in the kitchen, I really can't catch the things that go on out front and vice versa. But that's the beauty of having a family member in your business.
Amen.
Because nobody takes care of it like your family.
That's right. And
Thank
he had the best
God.
drill sergeant he could ever have.
Oh, yes.
He had Mom right there teaching
Yeah.
him.
In fact, this would be a great
And
time.
Where's Peyton at? We need to get Peyton in here.
Yeah.
And,
Don, would you open the door of the kitchen and just see if you can get my son to come here? Did you?
It's just such a God thing. How God worked it out.
I can't help myself.
That's okay. It's just how God works these things out.
Should we pull up a chair?
Well,
I think he can just stand
he
behind
can just
me.
stand behind Mom.
Okay.
So we're waiting on Peyton right now. He's on his way.
We're still filming.
We're filming, but you know what? They're working. This restaurant's open right
yeah.
now. We don't see all the people, and
There
I know
he is. Hi, Peyton.
Peyton, come join us here, and come join your mom, and Peyton, say hi in camera.
How's it going?
Introduce yourself.
Peyton McGee, her son, as she's probably already told you.
So Peyton, we wanted you to share. She's been sharing the whole story.
He mentioned something about boot camp, and I told the story about how when you first came. What did you say?
Well, years ago, whenever the topic of me eventually coming here to take over to help out came up, she would say, well, you need to get in the kitchen and learn everything. Learn how to not only notice that the soup is wrong, but why and how to fix it, and referred to it as boot camp. And so during this pandemic shutdown, we've definitely done that. We've been here 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for most of it. So that's been the boot camp.
But you made a great team.
Oh, totally.
She's been training you for years, man. You just didn't realize.
Every time he didn't have a job in college, in the summer or whatever, he was always here.
Bring me
Wow.
to work the register if I
Usually
had
the
2
register.
days off.
And he is great at the point of sale system and social media and online ordering. And, I'm 67 years old. That's not my strength. So.
Well, it's just such an honor to be able to come here to share your story. We all have a story.
Yes,
And I think of how the quote that God put on my heart for the radio show, Battlefield Connections, is though we may not be in the same war, we're all on this same battlefield called life.
Very true.
And we're looking for connections.
Yes.
And now we call them Battlefield Connections.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's
we're
so true. That's our connection.
That's right. And we
Our
need each other.
connection.
That's right. And we all need each other. And how important relationships are, but more than anything, how important our stories are. They matter.
Mm-hmm.
They matter. There's people out there listening that are walking through the same thing, Sandy, that may not have had that past to prepare them for today.
Right.
Where you're able to give them your input, share your story, but how you're able to make it today because of what God walked you through coming to this point.
Most definitely.
So I want to give your best commercial about your restaurant.
Wow.
This is your opportunity. This is your platform. Hey guys, come eat at Sandy McGee's in Richmond, Texas. What's the physical address? I know it's on Morton.
314 Morton Street, and our tagline is
Fresh, local, legendary.
I love it. Fresh, local.
legendary.
So guys, if you're ever in the Richmond, Rosenberg area, come to Richmond, Texas. Address again?
314 Morton Street, sandymcgees.com.
Come join us at Sandy McGee's. Come in and tell Sandy hi and tell them you seen her on beyond the battlefield. Guys, we love you, but more than anything, Jesus loves you. And have a blessed day.
Amen.